The excavator's bucket took its first bite out of the asphalt access road like a shark tasting a surfboard. HOA President Tilda Cranston sprinted down the cul-de-sac in her bedroom slippers, waving a 3-ring binder and screaming at the top of her lungs. "You can't trench a public road," she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. I held up the county property map, where the road glowed bright. Beautiful beige. Private property on my ranch. Not theirs. Never theirs. The excavator operator, an artist named Rick with a mustache that paid more in taxes than most people's car loans, asked me casually how deep I wanted it. I looked at Tilda, then back at Rick, and said with a slight smile, "Deep enough that their golf carts need rappel lines and climbing gear." I'm Mason Hale, quiet by nature, divorced by choice, happiest when power tools drown out the sound of small talk and neighborhood drama. After spending years dealing with HOA headaches in the city, where they tried to find me for having the wrong shade of beige mailbox, I bought the Pronghorn Ridge Ranch. 200 glorious acres of messy trees and endless sky just outside the town of Juniper Bluff. Here's the important detail that makes this whole story possible. The only paved access road to the fancy Juniper Bluff Estates HOA cut directly across my ranch on what they thought was a permanent arrangement. Turns out it was just a handshake license. The previous owner gave them back in 2005. No easement recorded at the county. No money paid, no legal standing, just neighborly vibes, and what looked like a coffee stain on a yellowing piece of paper. Tilda, the HOA president and self-appointed queen of the subdivision, showed up on day 2 of my ownership, wearing a designer silk scarf and an expression that looked like it had evicted people in a past life. "We expect your full cooperation, Mr. Hale," she announced with a sharp, condescending tone, stepping onto my cattle guard like it was a red carpet rolled out just for her entrance. "We have very high standards in Juniper Bluff Estates." I looked at her calmly, then looked at my fence post and said in my most pleasant voice, "So do I, ma'am." "Mostly barbed," I patted the weathered wood for emphasis. Her expression soured like milk in the desert sun. Cooperation in Tilda's twisted little world meant surrendering to a long list of increasingly absurd demands. She wanted me to repaint my entire ranch house to match their ridiculous Tuscan desert stucco palette, which looked like someone ate too much Southwest cuisine and got sick on every building. She demanded I prohibit my rooster from his sunrise negotiations with the hens, claiming the crowing violated quiet hours. She actually sent me a letter requesting I schedule my cows' bathroom habits so their natural droppings wouldn't offend the delicate sensibilities of Saturday morning walkers who trespass on my property. She ordered me to remove my vintage windmill, calling it a non-compliant industrial aesthetic that ruined their views. She sent me courtesy fines printed on HOA letterhead for my barn's red color, which she described in writing as aggressively menacing and hostile to property values. She even filmed my tractor with her phone like it was a criminal suspect, narrating into the camera about violations and nonconformity. Then, in the boldest move yet, the HOA replaced my ranch gate sign that read Pronghorn Ridge Private Property with one of their own that said Residents Only HOA Road. That's when I knew this wasn't going to end with polite conversations. I made a trip to the county recorder's office and spent 3 hours going through dusty files and digital records. There was no easement. Zero. The license letter I found even said in plain black and white text, "Revocable upon transfer of property." I had transferred the property by buying it. The license was void. I sent the HOA certified letter. Polite and professional. Road use revocation effective in 30 days. Tilda's reply came in the form of a neighborhood newsletter titled "Ranch Renegade Threatens Community Safety," where she accused me of engaging in frontier cosplay and road hoarding. Those were her actual words, printed and distributed to every mailbox in the subdivision. Week 2 brought escalation. An HOA vendor working under Tilda's orders cut my brand new lock with bolt cutters, installed a numeric keypad on my gate, and had the audacity to email me the access code for my convenience. Week 3. Dog walkers started leaving bags of evidence dangling on my barbed wire fence, like the world's worst Christmas ornaments. Someone spray-painted a giant yellow smiley face on my water tank. I installed security cameras on every corner, started logging license plates of every vehicle that crossed my property, and strategically rerouted my cattle so they'd pause right in the middle of the road like furry four-legged traffic cones. Tilda went door to door with a clipboard, signing up neighbors for her petition with a pen that she kept saying squeaked the words emergency access every fifth signature. Then lines got crossed literally and legally. Tilda called the county inspector to declare the road public by necessity, armed with printouts and highlighted documents. The inspector arrived in his county truck, flipped through property plat for 20 minutes, and gently told her the truth she didn't want to hear. "Ma'am, the county never accepted this road into the public system. It's a private driveway across Mr. Hale's land. You're trespassing." Tilda didn't miss a beat. She pivoted immediately to the fire marshal, proclaiming life safety concerns, with the kind of dramatic hand gestures usually reserved for opera performances. The fire marshal measured distances, frowned at the pictures of cut locks I provided, and muttered that you can't strong-arm a fire lane out of thin air just because you want one. That night, at exactly 11:42 p.m., my security cameras caught Tilda and 2 HOA board members sneaking onto my property. They snipped my new chain with professional-grade bolt cutters and tossed my private road no trespassing sign into the Ohio like it was garbage. The next morning, I filed a formal trespass report and a criminal mischief report with the sheriff's department and petitioned the county court for an emergency injunction. My binder, much better organized than Tilda's, had the original license letter, timestamp photos, crystal clear video footage, and a notarized sworn statement from the former ranch owner that said in writing, "I let them use it till I sold the property." That was the whole deal, nothing more. At the emergency hearing 3 days later, Tilda swanned into the courtroom wearing her best power suit and carrying a scrapbook decorated with ribbons, like she was presenting a school project. I walked in wearing clean jeans and boots with my surveyor, my lawyer, and an accordion folder full of legal documents. The contrast wasn't lost on anyone. The judge, a no-nonsense man in his 60s, who'd probably seen every property dispute possible, looked over the license letter for a long moment, then looked directly at Tilda with a stern expression that could freeze lava. "You knew this wasn't a permanent easement," he said, his voice cutting through the courtroom. She tried to mount a defense. "But tradition, Your Honor," she said desperately, her voice rising. "We've used this road for 20 years. He didn't hesitate. "Tradition isn't title, ma'am. 20 years of trespassing is still trespassing." He granted my injunction on the spot, barred the HOA and all its members from entering or using the ranch road, and told the fire marshal to develop a temporary emergency access plan that didn't involve my property. Before we left, the sheriff called Tilda over and warned her in a voice everyone could hear. "Any more lock cutting, any more vandalism, any more trespassing, and you'll be leaving in handcuffs. Do you understand?" She nodded, face pale. Meanwhile, the county engineer pulled out old subdivision plats and discovered something hilarious. Juniper Bluff Estates actually had a platted secondary outlet from when it was first developed. A perfectly legal gravel access road that the HOA had paved over years ago, with decorative boulders, desert plants, and an Instagram-worthy pergola to make the model home entrance look more exclusive and upscale. They'd literally buried their own emergency exit for aesthetics. The mood in the subdivision inverted overnight. Neighbors who'd signed Tilda's petition suddenly realized their private scenic entry was built entirely on expired favors and audacity. Title insurance companies started making concerned phone calls. Real estate agents started sweating through their blazers at open houses. At exactly noon on a honey-hot Friday in July, the sheriff's deputy posted my court order on a wooden stake driven into the ground like the world's spiciest yard sale sign. Rick the excavator, bless his efficient soul, lined up his massive equipment. I opened my gate for the absolute last time, nodded at the deputy to confirm everything was legal and documented, and gave Rick the signal to begin. The excavator bucket carved a handsome, completely impassable trench across the full width of the asphalt. 3 feet wide, 4 feet deep, with sweet red clay walls that looked like layers of cake in the afternoon sun. We laid down a culvert for my personal ranch use. Then installed a heavy-duty swing gate, steel ballards that could stop a truck, and a custom ranch arch overhead that read in cheerful letters, "Not in the HOA. My favorite addition to the property." Tilda pulled up in her luxury SUV, trembling with rage, waving her binder in the air like it was a holy text. "We'll just go around," she declared with false confidence. I calmly pointed to the fresh no trespassing signs running along both fence lines of my property. The sheriff's deputy, casual as sweet iced tea on a porch, said in a conversational tone, "Ma'am, around is also his land. You'd still be trespassing." Her face went through several interesting color changes. That evening, the HOA had no choice but to deter all deliveries, all traffic, all everything through their forgotten back route that hadn't been maintained in decades. Cue absolute chaos. Landscape company trucks got stuck axle deep in decorative gravel that was never meant to support weight. Amazon delivery vans ended up nose down in a dry wash. A wine-tasting shuttle bus tried to execute a 27-point turn in someone's butterfly garden and destroyed 50 plants. The decorative pergola, suddenly reclassified as emergency access infrastructure, had to be dismantled by volunteers, who quickly discovered that decorative hex bolts fight back when you're in a hurry. A neighbor wearing a string of pearls stood in her driveway screaming at a prickly pear cactus that had fallen over. The cactus did not apologize. County building code enforcement forced the HOA to fund and build a proper secondary road on their own property to current standards. $1.2 million after engineering studies, change orders, drainage issues, and a new culvert system the size of a studio apartment. Property insurance premiums for the entire subdivision climbed faster than a mountain goat on espresso. Tilda was formally charged with criminal trespass and vandalism for the lock-cutting incident caught on camera. She accepted a plea deal that included 200 hours of community service clearing tumbleweeds and trash from county road shoulders. The irony of an HOA president doing roadside cleanup was not lost on anyone in town. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted her out of her position. She sat in stunned, humiliated silence as the votes were counted out loud, her face turning the color of a ripe tomato, her precious binder clutched to her chest like a shield that had utterly failed to protect.